Hello, Iris J here with Madrona's Pulse Teachings, Astrology for Healing. And this is a weekly Astro Chat just on a topic of astrology. And I am talking to you today about something that's really important to me, part of why I practice astrology, why I launched this YouTube channel. And that is astrology really as a modality for healing. And what this means, how this happens, what this means when how we approach astrology, and it's specifically just opening up the way that we can really use this practice, because astrology is a practice that's ongoing. We could study for our life or lives and never fully understand it, which is part of its beauty. And specifically why I frame my practice as astrology for healing, and how I use this as a modality. And I think the first thing is that when we frame astrology this way, it really shifts a kind of common idea that astrology is for prediction. Astrology is for, when we work from a sense of prediction, we are working out of a desire to control for the most part. And for me, this is absolutely not what astrology is about. Astrology has a really interesting history for thousands of years, where of course it was used as a predictive tool for those in power. And it's not that we can't use it that way, and it's not that we can't gain insights, but there's another way to come into astrology, which has to do with being more in a co-creative recognition of the way that we embody a connection to all that is, including other humans, including other beings, including the earth, and including the cosmos that we are part of. And when we use astrology in this way, we're really working with it as a language of archetypes, which does root into kind of overlap with Jungian depth psychology, which is a place where the archetypes became very popular in our culture from a psychotherapeutic lens. And this opens up this idea that we embody the archetypes. There's an archetype of the sun, there's an archetype of Mars, there's an archetype of the divine feminine, the divine masculine energies, and they manifest in different ways. And in this way, when we get our natal chart, we're not looking at something that's static. We're looking at an imprint of our ever-evolving psyche and in our relationship to the archetypes as we embody it in this life. And this is kind of part of the lens of evolutionary astrology, which is what I practice. And so how is this healing? So this is healing, and the way that I use it as healing is very particular to what we think healing is, what we think wellness is, how we approach these kind of big topics. And I think a lot of my clients that come to astrology, and part of my path to it as well, is that there's just something that hasn't been met by normative everyday culture. There's something that we feel within ourselves, a connection that we feel within ourselves to something that maybe sometimes we can't even name. And some of us have, right here, this one, done some pretty big academic educational journeys, gotten lots of letters after our name, searching for that. And those journeys are so important. And I am a professor. I fully honor and love and believe in higher education for the art form of conceptual thought and thinking that it can be. But when it comes to searching for these things of connection and this language that expresses what it is we're feeling, astrology can offer that in a beautiful way that, in my experience, very few other systems of meaning making can. And when we start connecting to that language of symbols, which is really just a language of cycles, a language of spiraling cycles of shifting energies that we ourselves are simply just embodying, we start to tap into to cycles of being, and we start to find language for a lot of what we've experienced for our entire life and have felt and have known, but haven't necessarily seen reflected back at us. I think this is especially true when we come from backgrounds where astrology wasn't necessarily something we chat about at the dinner table, or it wasn't something, some people grow up with parents that are astrologers, or parents that have certain practices, and astrology is just part of the worldview. And some of us don't. And I certainly did not. And in that way, I think we always have an interest there. And then in my case, I ebbed and flowed out of it for quite a long time. And then, it just got deeper and deeper, and eventually it just consumed me inside and out, and it became very clear that this is part of what I'm doing. But it offers this language, this mirror, this connection that, in my experience, psychology is absolutely lacking. And in this respect, we all come and we find a balance between, our psychotherapeutic modalities of healing and then kind of more esoteric spiritual practices, which is where astrology falls into. And I think astrology just becomes so helpful in identifying parts of ourselves that are not here to be aligned to the mainstream, that are not here to just play the game, that are not here to just be dressed up and be pretty, that are not here to simply go along with the status quo. Because astrology as a system of meaning making shows us that this is not why humans are here. We're not here to just collect power and gain money and build technological advances. We're here to do it in a way that is absolutely about living in sync with this planet, with this earth, with all beings, and in a way that is evolving our spiritual growth. And even that language, right? When we're in the mainstream, it's not there for the most part. And I really want to name that for my practice, astrology is a healing modality for those of us that have also had very deep experiences that are silenced and continue to be silenced in society. And the way that those experiences, and here I'm really talking about complex childhood trauma, the way that those experiences are part of our whole being and will always be part of our whole being. And part of the issue of a traditional psychology practice is that, firstly, it's aligned to ideas of wellness that 100% come out of colonial patriarchal paradigms. There's been, in my view, quite little attention to that and change of that, even in progressive, if such a thing really exists, progressive approaches. And that there's just whole other ways of being, and that there's whole other value systems. If my values are living in connection with Earth and the cycles of Earth and embodying that connection and having that be part of my life, that's not a description of wellness for the kind of capitalistic mind that's programmed to just produce and produce and produce and create profit, which is what we see in our society. And it's really important to hold that we see that in all identities, right? We can say that I am a feminist woman because I'm allowing myself to have power and exploit others and create profit off of others. And then I'm really a female that has internalized patriarchy and colonial values. And we all come to our own balance of relating to power and money and struggles. But when we have an orientation value shift, everything changes. And astrology is like any other system of meaning. It can be distorted and contorted into certain mindsets and interpretations. If I just want to look at the chart and say, how am I going to make a shitload of money? I can do that. And there's so many astrologers that do that. And in my mind, we're not really sitting with the practice. We're not co-creating. Because when we develop a practice, and this takes years, and this is why I think our our social media astrology culture is great because it's bringing astrology into the mainstream in certain ways, but it's also conditioned by a very instantaneous, very quick medium and technology that is not really developing the embodied, deep practice that astrology is learning to sit with a chart, to listen to what's going on. And that practice of listening in and developing a deep relationship with the archetypes, which is a deeply healing relationship, that just takes time. That takes a while. And we know that our society is not often teaching us to sit and be with these modalities. And yet there's also instantaneous healing that can happen as we learn, right? One example of this is when we see a signature of a moon that is in a really close connection with the planet Uranus. You know, this has so much to say about our emotional and mental health journey, of what it's going to look like, of what our childhood, you know, patterns that could have been present. And one of the biggest things there is that if we have a moon in a close conversation with Uranus, which could be conjunct, could be opposite, could be square, there's so many ways, so many layers. Astrology is all about layers. Our emotions are not supposed to be like this. Our life is not supposed to be like this. It's not going to be like that. And when we come into an idea of wellness that's coming from kind of a more traditional normative system, we're getting taught to regulate. Now, we need to be able to regulate, and we need to live in a place that is healthy enough for us, what that means for us. A moon conjunct Uranus, a moon opposite Uranus is here for a reason to go like this. And it's about orientating ourself and our life so that we can be with the shifts we need to be a creative being, to claim that Uranian energy for ourselves. And everything can change. But when we're told we have to be a certain way, that might not be how we're programmed to be in this life. And we might be silencing gifts that we have to, firstly, create a thriving life for ourselves, and secondly, offer out to the world. And the world needs all of our gifts if we're going to make even a little bit of progress from the destruction that humans have done. So astrology also becomes a healing modality for the self, a journey into self-acceptance, a journey into thriving. And by doing that, it becomes a healing journey for the earth, for humanity, for the future to come. This is all what Pluto entering into Aquarius is about. And we have so many videos on the web about Pluto and Aquarius because it is huge energy. And we might see more astrology coming up. And I think as we do that, and as you who are watching this, and if you're still watching, you really are someone who has more interest in astrology as this healing modality, rather than something that's just about predicting, or rather than something that's really just about telling me that I'm going to have a great month because of this. And you know, when we use astrology for sun sign or rising sign horoscopes, which is what the vast majority, you know, it's simply often not accurate in certain layers, because if I have a sun that's in Scorpio that's opposite Chiron, that's very different than someone that has a sun that's in Scorpio that's conjunct Mars. That's very different, you know. So there could be themes that are coming up, but those themes also can, you know, and they can have really very little meaning for us. Yet we can get the idea and we can run with it. And then again, are we co-creating, or are we allowing our mind and our ego and someone else's mind and ego to construct an easier route into this human experience that isn't easy, you know? And yet when we learn astrology a little bit, and my practice of working with clients is really to help folks learn as we're going through a chart, we start just becoming aware of all these layers of connection and presence. And that is the healing. That is the embodiment. That is not needing to predict and not needing to know what's happening and not needing to hear directives for our life, because we become aware that we're the ones that embody the archetypes of our natal chart. And those archetypes are always in constant communication with what's transiting and what's happening. And so really what's healing is how we view the world, how we view ourselves. And it's just this ongoing opening. Okay, so this is really a bit of a heady conversation, but I like to have these Astro Chats every now and then for folks that are interested in going into these places. And I'm going to leave it at that. And I hope that you all have a wonderful day wherever you are in the globe watching this. And I'll see you soon. Take care.